I really didn't want to look at her, but those were the rules of the game I was playing now. 3 years passed and she still looked good, but I knew that her beauty was only in appearance. Tim, I'm so glad to see you. Why didn't you just come into our house and look at the kids? Honestly, I have no idea whether the police will be waiting for me when we agree to meet. I'm sure someone decided that I was to blame for all of your and your family's misfortunes over the past few years. Tim, no one is looking for you. State police came and investigated along with an arson investigator, and they couldn't find enough evidence to point the finger at any one person. Yes, I suppose they think you might have been to blame since no one else left town during the fires, but there are a lot of people here who don't like my father and his business methods. For weeks and months after that, all I heard was whispers about what else was going to happen to Dad. Did you know that the fire department expelled him from their ranks and declared him a black mark? He can't even serve on the board of trustees anymore. Nothing like this could have happened to a nicer person. In fact, I do not care. The only thing I want is to visit my children periodically. The rest of us can jump off a cliff and we'll all be better off. Are you still in town? Can I see you? What? Will I be arrested for kidnapping my own children, whom, according to a court decision, I can visit at any time without warning or reservation? She looked a little taken aback by this remark. I thought it would make you sit down and talk to me. I would never press charges against you. Yes. And every time I was stopped for some minor violation, it would show that I was once detained for kidnapping. I don't think their systems show that I might not have been tried or convicted. Sorry, but I can't help you with this matter. Also, if you withdraw your complaint, won't you be guilty of making a false report? It would look good on your file. They would never do that to me. Dad won't tolerate this. Yes, still the same Rebecca. Dad will fix everything. I have the right to do whatever I want, even if it violates the law or my ex-husband's rights. She dropped a bombshell on me. You are not my ex-husband. You and I are still married. I shook my head. Sorry, but I have documents according to which we are divorced, and I am no longer the father of my children. That's why I call them your children. After the fire, I turned to my lawyer with a request to cancel the divorce. Since a full 90 days had not passed, it was not recorded as final. Judge Gavin was so angry at my father for losing his car collection that he readily signed it. For some reason, Dad got very angry. What did you do to him to make him so angry? I have no idea. I was happy. I had a loving wife, 2 wonderful children, a good business, a certain authority in society, and suddenly I had absolutely nothing, and I was threatened with prison or hard labor because you and your fucking family set me up. I was forced to leave to be sure that a trumped-up accusation would not appear on my doorstep. She seemed surprised by my point of view on all this. No, that's not what we wanted at all. Really. Do you see the expression on my face? In my opinion, it qualifies as incredulous. Why did you force me to give away my children without warning or notice? Why couldn't I find a local lawyer or didn't have time to find one elsewhere? Why did you take over my company and demand that I work for damn minimum wage to keep it going? I think you and your dear daddy, along with your buddy Josh, for some strange reason, wanted me to screw up and end up in jail. She shook her head in denial. Well, yes, of course. All they did was look after my interests. I continued. And just so I know who's in charge here, last night you had me in bed until I couldn't see you anymore. And the next morning you called me names, dropped your bomb and left, taking my children away. You tore my world apart and trampled my heart as it beat on the floor. The last straw was when your fucking father tried to destroy my mother by filing trumped-up charges against her for not paying her property taxes. You bastards tried to put her out on the street for no reason. No, Dad would never act so vilely. He wouldn't harm your family. I had to laugh, and it wasn't a happy laugh. He sounded harsh and angry. Then why did you do everything possible to destroy me? If you came and told me that you fell in love with Josh again, I would give you a divorce. I would never try to keep someone who doesn't love me anymore. No, you should have taken everything and left me with no options. Dad said it would keep you around and that by giving up the kids, you wouldn't be able to sue for custody, but you'd still have to make sure we had the income we needed, befitting the Maines. Oh, that worked so well. Your dad started the rumor. I couldn't buy groceries or even put gas in my company car. I couldn't buy basic furniture. Nobody could even talk to me. Everything had to appear as if by magic so that I could survive. You denied me everything and wanted me to pay the bills. I had nothing more than my mother, and you tried to destroy even her. This was the last straw. I couldn't let you bastards hurt her. Damn, I just confessed. I hope she didn't write it down. That would be the only thing Ronald would need to put me behind bars for years to come. I struggled to regain control of my anger. Rebecca was still trying to deny everything when I disconnected the connection. Damn, I needed to leave and leave right now. I was dead tired from the stress of the day, but I got out and drove another couple 100 miles in the wrong direction before pulling off a quiet highway and hiding behind a grove of tall, dense trees to sleep. This was the closest call I've ever had to one of my secret visits to the kids. I continued to do my due diligence whenever I contacted my mom. I used one of my phones, occasionally using Skype to see the kids. They were growing so fast that I wished I could be there to see them every day, but my paranoia wouldn't allow it. I finally saved enough money to hire a lawyer. I paid her in cash to verify my marital status and parent status. Hell, Rebecca wasn't lying when she said we were still married. Because this was true, I removed the child support deduction from my paycheck. This bitch didn't deserve any money directly from me. Instead, I sent them to my mom with the instruction that they should benefit Connie and Tad, not Rebecca. She could distribute them at her discretion. I know she probably just gave the entire amount to Rebecca, but it made me feel more confident. The lawyer also discovered that my children's adoption had been canceled. I think Josh didn't want to have any more kids unless he was going to get the keys to the kingdom. I can't imagine how he was going to get rid of his previous wife and children, but I didn't care. I probably should have followed him, but I figured I'd thwarted his plans enough. When I found out that I was still married, I went ahead and filed for divorce. This meant that I would have to return to my hometown to attend the hearing. Even though my lawyer was convinced that there was no active arson investigation, I was reluctant to come back publicly. Ronald had his horns cut, but he was still a force to be reckoned with. I had no idea how he was going to fight me, but I had to be on guard at all times. The day before the first hearing, I slipped into town and checked into a small motel on the outskirts. Of course, I registered under the usual fictitious name, John Smith. The motel owner knew me and silently agreed to keep my secret. On the morning of the hearing, I left the gun in the car since there were now metal detectors in the courthouse. I was completely unarmed. I didn't even have a pocket knife to protect myself in case Ronald tried to do something in the courtroom. When the hearing began, Judge Gavin, yes, the same judge who screwed me earlier, immediately wanted to listen to Rebecca and her lawyer. What do you want from this hearing? Surprisingly, she wanted counseling and had me back as her husband. I was not allowed to speak, but I sat and shook my head. Of course, Rebecca tried to portray our marital history as one of misunderstanding and confusion about her true feelings. Lord, what nonsense. And of course, the good judge seemed to buy her horse hockey. After Rebecca told me about how I abandoned my family, my lawyer got a chance to answer. I told her everything, even about my night of fire and retribution. Fortunately, she avoided that night. The good judge objected to her characterization of his actions from the dock, but she pointed out that everything he did on that fateful day of my first divorce proceedings was public knowledge and could not be refuted. He finally stopped hammering, looking at my face. Somehow I think he's suddenly worried about his new budding car collection. I simply nodded as he realized his potential new losses. He leaned back in his chair and fell silent. The lawyer continued with my story. When she got to the kidnapping episode, the good judge suddenly became carried away again and leaned forward. He looked not at me, but at Rebecca with a stern expression. He raised his hand to silence my mouthpiece. This is true? Did you actually file a complaint that Mr. Meheran abducted the children and tried to arrest him, even though the visitation permit issued by this court stated that he could visit the children at any time? Rebecca, like a deer caught in headlights, looked at her lawyer for help. He didn't play along with her. The judge became a little more decisive. For God's sake, why would Tim come back here and get married to you again? I admit that the whole divorce process was quick, and there seemed to be good reasons for it. But this man was persecuted and ostracized in his hometown. His mother was persecuted. Again, why should he want to come back to you? Is it only for the sake of the children, or only for the sake of your imaginary benefit? What should he do when your panties start twitching again? Is he expected to go through the same horrible treatment again? Before Rebecca had time to respond, her lawyer jumped up as if he had been electrocuted and asked for a short break and the opportunity to meet with the lawyers in private. My lawyer just shrugged his shoulders, but did not object. Judge Gavin lowered his gavel and left the courtroom. Both lawyers left with him and appeared only a few minutes before the hearing resumed. Upon his return, the judge looked angry. Rebecca's lawyer looked ashamed, but my lawyer smiled. After the rehearing, Judge Gavin called a surprise witness. Ronald Maines, please take the oath and take the witness stand. Little did I know that my father-in-law was actually present at the hearing. I didn't know why he wanted it, other than to support his daughter, and I saw no reason why he should support her attempt to win me back. Ronald walked forward and gave me an angry look as he passed the table. He took the oath and then sat on his throne as a ruler. The judge began the interrogation. Tell the court, Mr. Maines, why you are here and what contribution you can make to the trial. My hopefully soon-to-be ex-father-in-law gave the judge a dirty look, somewhat similar to the one he gave me, and began ranting. I don't know why my stupid daughter wants that pathetic son of a bitch back. He only caused us heartache and suffering. I can't even tell you how much money my bank and I lost because of his actions. I want this little shit to go to jail and hopefully throw away the key. The judge slammed his gavel to stop the tirade. In the office, your daughter's lawyer hinted that you have something important for the court. Please get started with this. I was surprised that the kind judge did not reprimand Ronald for his profanity. Ronald didn't look punished. He really looked out of control. My daughter should not have agreed to marry this chicken shit. He is a lowlife from a lowly family. When my daughter brought it in, I was shocked, but she had to have him. I put up with it until Joshua Webster came to work for me. I made sure that Rebecca and he were together as often as possible and decided that Joshua would seduce her. Since they were high school sweethearts, this shouldn't have been too difficult. She resisted a little longer than I expected, but in the end, she fell under his spell. It's only a pity that at this time she did not become pregnant from him. The judge asked, what about the little fact that Joshua Webster was already married and had children of his own? The plan was that once Rebecca was divorced, he would quietly divorce his wife and give up rights to his children, and then become the father of Constance and Thaddeus, which is what I wanted from the beginning. Macaron should never have fathered anyone of my blood. I was outraged to no end every time I had to endure him sitting at my table for any reason. The judge allowed him to continue for a few minutes before asking another question. Was it your intention to force Mr. Macaron to leave the city or go to prison? I wasn't really interested in it, but prison was the preferred outcome. Then we could prove why he should not communicate with my daughter or her children. So, is it true that you used your bank to persecute Mr. Macaron and create conditions under which he could break the law? Were the phone calls from Mrs. Maharon violating the protective order incitement on your part? Ronald smiled. Yes, Judge, it was my idea. I asked Rebecca to call her ex-husband and then called the police on him. I have no idea why he was never arrested and convicted of violating orders to stay away from Rebecca. The judge nodded. Thank you, Mr. Maines. That's all. You can leave. Ronald still had an unpleasant expression on his face as he left the witness box. It changed slightly as the judge continued. I advise you to consult with your lawyer. I am providing the official record and transcript of the trial to the district attorney for possible prosecution. You, sir, abused your position in society to persecute this man. Unfortunately, this happened with my help and is something I am trying to correct before I retire. A dissatisfied expression appeared on Ronald's face. Apparently, his influence was no longer as strong as before. He turned and stared at his former friend. The judge smiled at him. Ronald lowered his head slightly and walked towards the exit of the courtroom. The judge turned back to Rebecca's lawyer. "Do you have anything else before I make a decision?" The lawyer quickly jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, my client had no idea what her father and her lover were planning. She was an innocent victim, just like Mr. Mekaron. That is why she asked for counseling with the goal of reconciliation and returning to the happy marriage they had before Mr. Joshua Webster came to town." Judge Gavin looked at me and my lawyer. We both shook our heads. The judge spoke again. "I'm sorry, Rebecca, but you may have been somewhat of an innocent dupe in all of this, but that doesn't justify the hell you put your husband through during and after the divorce hearing. You treated him disgustingly and even tried to arrest him on false charges. I can't imagine how he could forgive you enough to let you get so close to him again." Rebecca jumped up and started screaming that she loved me and her children needed me back. The lawyer calmed her down before the judge could hold her accountable for contempt of court. Judge Gavin continued, "If your husband had asked for sole custody of the children, I would have even considered this petition based on your attitude towards him, but he turned out to be the best person in this room. The terms of the offer are generous. He does not even ask for his business to be returned to him. I decide the case in favor of the plaintiff." With these words, he slammed the gavel again, stood up and left the hall. Now I was a truly free man. Rebecca sat and cried. The lawyer tried to console her. My lawyer shook my hand and asked if I would like to file a civil suit against my ex-father-in-law. I shook my head. My children must have some kind of relationship with this asshole and his wife. I won't interfere with this. She nodded and we left the courtroom. Rebecca tried to grab my jacket sleeve and begged me to talk to her as we walked out the door. She distracted me and I almost missed a movement on the right side. Now I have to tell you something. I'm not a fighting person. I wasn't a Navy SEAL, an Army Ranger, or a Navy SEAL. I don't do MMA to stay in shape. But one of my favorite films is The Quiet Man with John Wayne. I love the moment when his brother-in-law tries to hit him in an open field in front of everyone in town. I always kept this technique of his in mind as a method of self-defense. And Ronald hit me on the sly as I was leaving the hall. He aimed for my head and I ducked a little, and his first flew past, leaving him completely unprotected. I threw a short left hook to the midsection like John Wayne did, and damn, it worked. He was very powerful. Ronald's breath rushed out of his open mouth and he began to arch in pain and the need to try to catch his breath. I hit him with my right hand in the face and he fell to the floor. I stood with clenched fists and waited for him to rise. I wasn't going to hit him in his weak spots right in front of witnesses, even though he deserved it. At that moment, county bailiffs arrived and rushed to arrest Ronald for assault. By the time Ronald's head cleared and he could breathe again, he was handcuffed and read his rights. Of course, he compounded his problems by threatening me while he was being helped to his feet and then attempting to headbutt the bailiff. This added a felony charge, since all bailiffs in our county are sheriff's deputies, and hitting a law enforcement officer is always a felony. Rebecca just stood there, speechless. Neither she nor anyone else had ever seen me behave like this. I nodded to her lawyer and he nodded back. He then turned around and tried to get Ronald to calm down before adding other felonies to the charge. "Rebecca, listen to me. It's over now. Don't screw it up and don't deny me time with the kids. Your father needs you. Call your mom and try to help him before he completely breaks down." She stared at me before it finally dawned on her. With a sad, almost mournful expression on her face, she nodded and turned to help her father regain what little dignity he had left. The adrenaline began to wear off and my right arm began to hurt. I looked at her and took a moment to try to figure out why a pair of fingers seemed crooked. When the pain reached its limit, I realized that I must have broken my arm. My lawyer saw the shocked look on my face and rushed to put me in her car and take me to the hospital, where an X-ray confirmed the fact that Ronald's head was as hard, if not harder, than my hand. Soon I was given painkillers and put in a cast. God bless her, my lawyer stayed with me and took me to my mother's house for rehab. The only bad thing about my injury was the pain and the need for corrective surgery for the fractures to heal properly. Otherwise, I was able to see my children every day for the next week while I recovered and got to know them better. I put up with Rebecca coming every evening to pick up the kids. She and my mother used this opportunity to try to get me back into married life. I would spend extra time with the kids or take long walks while she was there. A week later, I was returning to my new city and my job. Several more years passed. My children are growing up. In the summer and holidays, they stay with me for several weeks. Sometimes their mother takes them, sometimes they fly to me. Yes, now everyone knows where I live. At first, Rebecca even brought them by car a couple of times, but she decided it wasn't worth making such a long trip if she had to stay in a motel after she brought the kids to me. In the end, she realized that there would be no return to a close relationship with me. We remained polite because of the children. I've forgiven her enough to not call her a bitch anymore. After many of my former clients sent letters asking to come back and take back their business, I convinced Rebecca to buy her company from her and turned my old company into a district office. It was small, but it prospered and increased overall profits. I was responsible for making it profitable, so I flew into the nearest regional airport every month and then used a rental car to service customers, but we had good local people to handle most of the issues. Rebecca went through several different boyfriends before finally starting a long-term relationship with her former lawyer. They had no intention of having any more children, so they simply lived in sin. Ronald was convicted but served his sentence only on weekends for 6 months. It would seem like a light sentence, but he also had to complete 200 hours of community service. A kind judge told him to either clean the city's ditches or help cook and serve food to the homeless. I think Ronald has become a pretty good cook. In fact, he continued to serve after serving his sentence. He then received 5 years probation. Mom is doing well. She has found a new man who provides her with the companionship she needs in retirement. They are happy, and she loves her 2 grandchildren and sees them every day, unless they come to see me. And we can't forget about good old Josh. I don't know who gave him to his wife, but I think she played hell with him for several years. She first kicked him out, filed a separation, and made it so that he had virtually no income after he paid for the house, cars, and child support. She then divorced him after luring him home one night and making him believe a reconciliation was possible. But no, she tied him to a chair and had sex with a couple of his best friends in front of him, and then kicked him out of the house again. Now he is divorced and has little prospects. As for me, I'm still a work in progress. I have serious problems with trusting women, and especially potential relatives. I date and have a good sex life at times. There are many previously attached women in the world. Most of them have luggage and children. I date, try to be a good influence on children, but don't make any commitments. I try to be honest with any woman when we start dating. Each of them begins to believe that she will be the one to fix me. But something always happens that makes me believe that we cannot have a long-term relationship. I have a therapist, and we are trying to make the necessary adjustments. I now have a 3-bedroom house that I paid cash for. Yes, I still don't trust banks very much, although my credit score has improved thanks to my ex-father-in-law. He corrected his reports to the credit bureaus without any request from me. Maybe I should have punched him in the face at the beginning of our relationship. No, nothing good would come of that. In any case, I am not dissatisfied with my life. I, of course, miss close relationships, but watching how most of the marriages around me fall apart for one reason or another, I think that I am not so behind the times. As they say, life goes on. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.